Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I am going to be sharing my review of Role Player from Thunderworks Games. This is designed by Keith Matejka with artwork provided by JJ Ariosa, Vincent Dutrait, and Louis Francisco. And I apologize, I guarantee I've mispronounced at least one of those names. This game is for 1 to 4 players, ages 10 and up, plays in around 60 to 90 minutes, and it does carry an MSRP of $59.95. All that said, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Role Player from Thunderworks Games. A couple of things I want to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, the fine folks over at Thunderworks Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy. But neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's important you know that. I'm also going to provide a bit of a how to play, but I might miss a thing or two. So just letting you know, I'm probably not going to delve into every tiny minor detail of the game design, but I am going to give you a pretty thorough overview of how to play Role Player and then share my thoughts about the game as well. Do have to mention that this is pretty much the game that put Thunderworks Games on the map, and I can see why. And now the company's got loads and loads of games, some which are set in this game universe like Role Player Adventures and Cartographer, which I have heard really good things about both those games. Honestly, I'd love to have an opportunity to take a peek at those as well. But this is the first time I've looked at any Thunderworks title, and I gotta say, I was impressed. Elliot was impressed. Now, granted, this game has been out for a while. This came out in about 2016, and I remember it because my good friend, game designer Herman Luttman, and his friends were at Origins Game Fair. I was there as well, and they were demoing this. They demoed it a couple of times, actually, which that's saying something when you've got a game designer demoing a game a few times. All right, so let's dive on in. So the first thing I'm going to mention is the rule book is really well presented, crystal clear, had absolutely no issues whatsoever learning how to play the game. Now, granted, we did have to rely on taking a peek in it a few times when we were learning to play, mainly as far as scoring and how you gain gold as the game progresses. But other than that, just really nicely presented and understood it just like that. So what I've done is I've kind of set up the game to give you an idea of what we would be looking at with a 3-player game. So the first thing you're going to do is you are going to select a race. And there are 6 in total. So you have some options here. I like that because remember, this is for 1 to 4 players. And of course, we've got each race has male and female. So you can make your choice there. I've just gone with a human. And then what you'll also do is you're going to receive your class card randomly. So we have a cleric or a paladin as far as the choices on this card. Once again, we've got quite a few different options available to us, such as the sorcerer and the wizard. We've got the druid and the ranger, the bard and the monk, the thief, and the rogue. So once again, we've got a few options here. Now, I do know that there are some expansions for Role Player that are out. I can't tell you exactly what they are, but I would take a guess. They probably do include more races, more backstories, more classes, and things along those lines. So I chose the paladin, and with our paladin, their color dye for their class is white, just like so. Then you also get a random backstory. So my backstory here is a craftsman. Doesn't really do anything as far as gameplay mechanics. But here, this is showing a pattern of different dice that I'm going to look to try to achieve in order to gain more reputation points. Reputation points are essentially victory points. That's how you win the game. We also will have a random alignment card, which is a little bit different than role-playing alignments. It's not lawful evil or chaotic good or anything like that. We just kind of have an idea like champion, sociopath, eccentric. And we do have traits and skills that kind of skew towards alignments, like good and evil, which will move the little cube around when we happen to sometimes purchase those cards or use those skills. So interesting little mechanic here. And of course, we're trying to keep ours right there because at the end of the game, if our cube is there, it will get us 3 additional reputation points. If they're over here in these stars, they are -1. So we want to try to get it right in the middle there. So as far as the class, we're going to have a range or maybe even a specific number that we want as far as that attribute in order to score our reputation points. So for the Paladin, a strength of exactly 17 will get us 3 points. Dexterity of 15 to 16 gets us 2. Constitution 17 will get us 3. An intelligence of 14 or higher will get us 1. A wisdom of 16 to 17 gets us 2. And charisma of 14 or higher is going to get us 1. Now, there are going to be some market cards that could change these. So you may be looking to be clumsy, and that would possibly get you more reputation points if you have a clumsy card and your dexterity is 8 or lower. All depends on what your class is and what market cards happen to come out. Now, as far as our backstory, it depends on how many of these dice we have in the correct location. We can go anywhere from 1 reputation point to 6 reputation points. So to start off, each player is going to reach into our draw bag filled with dice and roll 6 dice. So I've already done that. So these are the dice I pulled. These are the scores I got, and then I assigned them. Now, one aspect of our dice color here, because we have white as our class, for each white die we have on our character sheet, we are going to score a reputation point at the end of the game. The premise of this game is we are creating fantasy role-playing characters. So we're not going to play a game with them, but the process is as we're creating these characters, we are looking to pick up these various different reputation points. We can score reputation points from market cards too. So once you've got all that set up, you're going to have a first player, and it's going to rotate around the table. With 3 players, you're going to draw 4 dice out of the bag, and then you roll them. And then that active player, that first player, is going to seed these initiative cards. So they go in order from low to high, just like so. And then the active player is going to get to choose a die because there is a die drafting mechanic to the game. So, of course, if I'm looking to possibly get something that's up in the market that I really want, these numbers here are going to determine the order the players are going to make purchases from the market. So it's important to kind of balance if there's something in the market you really want that you're afraid maybe another player is going to take, or maybe they're going to discard it. Because if you decide not to buy an item from the market, you can discard a card and actually get a couple of gold. And a lot of times, if a player doesn't see anything that really jumps out at them to get, they might determine, oh, well, you know what? I bet you another player is going to try to get a different card. So they'll discard that card out of the market before you get an opportunity to buy it. So if you're looking at market cards to buy, you're probably going to want to go lower. If you really don't care, you can go higher. So in this case here, I am actually going to take the 4, which would mean I would buy out of the market last. So I will take that. I'm going to place that there. And then I am going to actually place my die. Depending on what attribute I place this die into, it will allow me to actually take an attribute action. So as an example, if I place it into strength, I can actually change any die's face to its opposite side. So if I put this into strength, I could change any of these dice to their opposites. If I went with dexterity, that allows me to swap any 2 dice. It does not have to be the die you just placed. It's any dice. If I place it into constitution, that allows me to change the face of a die up 1 or down 1. If I placed it in wisdom, then that will allow me to move my alignment block, my cube, 1 in any direction, which of course I'd be looking to move it there because that's where I want it to be. And my special ability actually gains me a gold piece if we begin a round, and that's on that 3 reputation point star. And if I place it in charisma, then what I'd be looking at there is I would actually get, essentially it's a gold coin, but it must be spent in the market that round. Otherwise, I lose it. It won't be added to the coins that I've already got. So the reality here, I would probably just go with strength. And then, because that allows me to change to the opposite face, I could change this 1 to a 6 because I need high wisdom to get reputation points. So then it's the next person's turn. So they're going to draft their die. And let's say, for an example, they take this, they'll actually get a gold piece that they can add to their bank. And then they would take this die, place the die. Then the third player, they get to go. They're going to choose their die. Let's say they take that. They take their gold piece. They place their die. And then we would have 1 left over. That's just going to go right back into the bag. And then in the order of our initiative will allow us to make our purchases from the market. Now I'm just going to bring these cards down a little bit. And the market cards are divided into 2 piles. You're going to take cards that have a little dot there, put them in one pile, and then for later in the game, they have 2 dots. So we separate those into 2 piles. Depending on the number of players we might have in the game, we might end up putting some of those cards from both of those decks back into the box. Then we take the 1 dot cards, place them on top of the 2 dot cards, and that is your market. So here we've got a mace. That's our purchase price. Might have a special ability. As far as weapons, unless you're the barbarian, you can only have 2 hands worth of weapons. So the mace and the longsword are each 1. So you could actually have both of those. Then it'll have like a special ability. So the blessed mace has, when any player discards a card from the market, gain 1 gold. Longsword, when scoring attribute goals, +1 value to all dice of your class color. Acrobatics is actually a skill. So you can use 1 skill per round. You'll actually turn it sideways to show that you've used it. And this gives a +1 face value to 1 die and -1 face value to a different die on your character sheet. Now, it's important to keep in mind, adding 1 to a 6 does not make it a 1. It stays a 6. Just like subtracting 1 from a 1 does not make it the 6. It stays as a 1. Then we got armor here, which there is no limit on the number of pieces of armor you can have. And this is part of a collection here. So it's leather gloves. depending on how many leather items you have at the end of the game, is going to determine how many reputation points you will score. So people will be buying their market cards or discarding market cards to get gold, and then you'll move on to the next round. Now, it's important to keep in mind the yellow die here is worth gold. So if you choose to take an initiative card that's got a yellow die on it, you will actually gain a gold. And when you finish up a row, so let's say as an example, I wrapped up with that, I would actually be complete with my strength and I would get a gold piece. Now, if the final die I used was gold, I would get 2 gold pieces. So there are a variety of different ways that you can actually earn gold. Sometimes maybe you have a special ability or you've got a market card, or as an example, my paladin, if I were here, I get the gold. So there are a lot of little things you want to kind of keep your eyes peeled for in order to score points. We'll also point out this can be very random. So it is entirely possible that you just never have an opportunity to complete many of these. Sometimes your attributes can be a little difficult to get those exact numbers. But we got a really huge kick out of this game. We really did. Now, one thing I will also mention is when you're playing role player, you can kind of try to come up with some strategies, but be prepared to throw those out the window at the earliest opportunity, because you have to be able to, no pun intended, roll with the dice here, because sometimes you'll find things just pop up out of nowhere and it's like, well, wait a second. So as an example here, my intelligence is 14 or higher to get 1 reputation point. Well, there might be a market card. I know there is a market card where if your intelligence or wisdom is 8 or less, you get 2 reputation points. So that might be worth buying and aiming for a low intelligence to get more of the reputation points. There are all different ways for you to score those reputation points. So you will continue to play. You'll continue to draft 1 die each round until you have filled in all of your dice. And then you will go into your final scoring. So you're going to do your scoring for your attributes. You're going to count up the number of dice that match your class color. That's also going to be worth 1 reputation point each. You're going to take a look at your background card, see if you've completed any of these objectives. How many of them will determine how many reputation points. You're going to take a look at your alignment there to see how you did with that. You may have trait cards that provide you with reputation points. And of course, you might have armor sets like the leather here, which will also give you reputation points. And of course, whoever's got the most reputation points at the end of the game is the winner. There are some tiebreakers too. And there is also a solitaire mode for the game where you're looking to score just as many reputation points as you possibly can. So that in essence is how you play Role Player from Thunderworks Games. So let's swing on over to the other camera because I'm going to share some final thoughts and give this a review score. So I brought Role Player with to Gen Con because I really wanted to check it out. I wanted to try it out. And I knew my best friend Elliot Miller and I were going to mainly spend our evenings hanging around the hotel playing games. So I brought it with, and we actually played it 4 times in the time we were there. And we actually got some strangers to play it with us when we were hanging out at the hotel. So I got to play this enough times with a variety of number of players. I did not play it solitaire. And I want to say we only played it with 2 players once. But I enjoyed the hell out of this, and so did Elliot. we really, really liked it a lot. And I'll be very honest, the theming of it, as far as fantasy role-playing characters and that, it's not necessarily baked into the cake. I mean, this is kind of an abstract puzzle game in most respects, but just having that theme really does bring the game more to life than if it was just, oh, well, it's a puzzle. You need to get dice in these various different formations, and you need to have your dice add up to whatever number of points. So all in all, really, really enjoyed Role Player a lot. Now, I will say that there is a lot of luck involved, so it is possible that your luck just doesn't even out in a particular game, and every time you turn around, nothing's going your way. It could happen. Just like it's possible that every time you're the first player, it's like, wow, I got exactly what I want. Or it's like, oh, the dice are all crap, so I'm going to take a low one because I really want that market item. That happens as well. So keep that in mind. Also, keep in mind that you really can't come up with a strategy that you're going to adhere to specifically, because things change with the roll of a few dice. I should also mention that it is possible the more you play, the more the bloom might come off the rose a little bit. But there are a lot of expansions out there which will build upon Role Player 2. So, as I mentioned, Elliot and I really, really enjoyed Role Player, and I give Role Player from Thunderworks Games a 9 out of 10. It is that good. Liked it quite a bit, and I would love to see some of the other games that take place in this game world from Thunderworks Games, such as Cartographers and Role Player Adventures, as a couple of examples. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.